With that, I'll go ahead and kick it over to Kevin.
Yeah, sure thing. Thank you, Stephanie. Appreciate you. So yeah, welcome to the Indoor Air Quality Subcommittee meeting. Happy New Year. I know we meet every so often, and it's nice to see familiar faces and also a new face as well. So yeah, let's go kick off with introductions. So I think where we can start off is just drop in your name, pronouns, org representing, and also I also have a small checking question. What's your favorite thing about rain? I know rain gets a bad rap. So I just wanted to kick off in this in the spirit. So I could go first, then I'll popcorn it off. So yeah, my name is Kevin Sunga. My pronouns are he, him, and siya. I'm representing Little Manila Rising here. And favorite thing about rain is I like the pitter patter. I actually like the sound. Helps with the sleeping. And I'll pass it off to my co-lead, Jazzy.
Thank you, Kevin. I like that check-in question, by the way. Nice to meet you, Michelle. I'm Jazz Marie Latour. Feel free to call me Jazzy. She, her, Jazzy pronouns, and I'm a resident on the CSC for Stockton. And I would say my favorite thing is seeing it on the windows. I think it's really beautiful to look at, like when it trickles down the windows. Yeah. And I'll pass it over to Cynthia. Glad you're here.
Hey folks, good afternoon. Cynthia Cabrera, she, her, hers with Central Valley Air Quality Coalition. I'm the policy coordinator and I'm not a rain person. I'm a summer girl through and through, but if I had to pick something that I liked about the rain is probably, I think I agree with Kevin, I'm a big sound person. I love different kinds of sounds and I do the like white sounds usually to sleep. So I will go with the sound and, you know, the temptation to cuddle up and have a warm drink. So yeah, I'll pass it off to Brian.
Hey everyone, my name is Brian Moore. My pronouns are he, him, and I work for CARB's Office of Community Air Protection, which helps implement AB 617 at the state level. And yeah, a kid, I love rain. Same thing sitting inside, like having a warm drink or watching a movie or something like that. But now that I'm older and I guess I don't own my house. The bank owns my house, but I pay the bank rent. But so many things leak and break that it just freaks me out now. Like I have so much flooding and especially this year and gutters breaking that yeah, the rain is kind of torments me now, unfortunately, because I'm in charge of fixing the stuff that leaks. Yeah. But no, it's still great. I actually on a high note. Yeah. So Kyle, go ahead. I'll pass it over to you.
Hey, all right. Thanks, Brian. Hey, everybody. I'm Kyle Goff. I'm with CARB. My pronouns are he, him, his. And I work on the incentives side of things. And I love rain. I feel like it sounds like I'm sort of preaching to the choir here, but I love rain. And my favorite thing is just sitting under a big heavy blanket with rain sounds outside, reading a book. Ooh, I love it. Very few things I like more than that. Yeah, I think that's it for me. I'm gonna pass this over to I'm gonna go to Janine.
Thanks, Kyle. Janine Tackett, Supervising Air Quality Specialist here in the Grants Department at the district. And my favorite thing about the rain is how it cleans the air. And the fact that once that happens, you can see forever and you can just really, really see the beauty of our mountains. And on a really great day, we can see both the coastal range and the Sierra Nevada range. So, you know, living here in the valley, that's definitely a favorite time is when we get a good heavy rain and it clears everything out and we can just see how beautiful of an area we live in. And I'll go ahead and pass it off to Stephanie.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephanie. I use she, her pronouns. And my favorite thing about the rain, I'm surprised no one has said this. I like the smell, like when it rains and you kind of get that fresh, like rain. I don't know exactly what it is, but it smells delightful and I love it.
It has a name, doesn't it?
I could-
Petrichor.
Is that what it's called?
Petrichor, I think. Yeah. Sorry, sorry, interrupt you. I'm sorry.
No, I'm happy to have a name for it. Someone type that in. I have no idea. I've never heard that. I like it. And with that, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Michelle.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle Rivera. I am a new air quality education rep. I am bilingual. I'm new to the team. I just started, this is my 3rd week with the team here. I use she, her pronouns. And I think my favorite thing about the rain would be puddles. You know, just jumping in puddles and going back to being a little kid and not caring about anything and just being able to jump in puddles is always so much fun. But I also like, you know, the calm before the storm is always really nice. I think someone mentioned, you know, just being able to sit down with like a hot chocolate or hot cocoa or something like that is always nice. But the not so nice part is the after the storm. So I for me, I have my house being inspected tomorrow to get some work done on my roof. But glad to be here.
Well, thanks everyone for indulging in the check-in question. Hope everyone stays safe amongst like this wet weather. Michelle, welcome to the group. You'll learn that we're a really nice bunch. Everyone here has been pretty amazing. And yeah, like this is a very fun work group. So just moving us along in this agenda, our meeting objectives today outline the next steps for the IAQ proposal. We've done a lot of good work. And I know Stephanie and Janine have worked really hard on getting the proposal to CARB. And we're going to give some updates on the governing board, which we came out for public comment. And then also leave some room for discussion and come to consensus on eligibility and distribution model ideas. And there's 3 topics to talk about during that section. So I'd like to hand it off to Stephanie and Janine to give us to check us in and to also give us an updated next steps on the IAQ proposal.
Thanks, Kevin. And I have, just in preparation for this meeting, we did put together a couple of slides with the co-leads. I think I'm just gonna, for the purposes of this conversation, just walk through the first of just like a reminder of where we've been and where we're going. And then maybe as we move on to the next couple of discussion points, I'll use the other slides to kind of support that. I don't want to overwhelm all of us all at once. So it's been a minute since we've met. So our last meeting was back in November and a lot has happened with this measure. We're so excited for it. But just as kind of a reminder to you all, this indoor air filtration measure is, of course, the $1 million allocated in our SERP to provide free air filtration units and replacement filters to residents within our AB 617 boundary in Stockton. And if you all recall, back in November, the subcommittee did work to recommend submitting that project plan that we had reviewed together and brought this back to the full CSC in December. In December, our CSC recommended submitting the project plan overall. And so after that, we did submit this project plan to CARB for approval. And generally with this process, what tends to happen is we do get comments back in which we respond to. We so appreciate Janine who followed up with it on a lot kind of during during the holidays and got back, responded to the comments really quickly when we did receive them. So we so appreciate Janine's work on that. And in February, so actually 2 weeks ago, this item got taken to our district governing board and was approved. And we appreciate a lot of folks actually from our AB 617 communities came out and spoke in support of it, including Little Manila Rising. And so the goal of today is we did just want to kind of share those updates and then also talk about next steps. Now that it's kind of been approved by our district governing board and now that the project plan is very close to getting approved by CARB, we really want to start kind of looking ahead and start thinking about how we want this program implemented in Stockton. Some steps we'll look towards kind of in the first quarter of this year, hopefully very soon, is we will hopefully have a project plan approval from CARB. And then also release what we call a request for quotation or RFQ. And this is something that will go out in order for us to kind of get best available pricing and to understand kind of what manufacturers are out there that want to work with us on this program. And finally, this is something our goal really is to kind of ahead of the wildfire season before the summer, kick this program off. And potentially we want to talk to you all about this today. But if it's of the interest of this group and the CSC, we do want to think about kind of, in addition to opening this program, potentially doing some in-person distribution and outreach events. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a minute and see if there's any questions or even open it up to Janine if there's anything that you want to add.
I don't think there's anything that I want to add at this point.
I have information relevant to this. I actually have some good news. Nothing official yet, but I did check in with the team here that did the review of the project plan. for an update, and they were able to confirm that everything that you guys sent back with the latest round of responses looked good. It is with our branch chief Tess for review. They are hoping that she's able to get that approved before the end of the week, and then we can send the whole package over to you guys. I think it's more likely to be next week, personally, just because from my personal experience of how these things go. But certainly by the end of this week or next week, should be all wrapped up.
That's great, Kyle. Thanks so much for that update. Really appreciate it.
And if there are no other questions on kind of just where we've been, I wonder if Kevin and Jazzy, if you want to kind of provide an update or just kind of what happened at the district governing board. Again, we had a meeting about 2 weeks ago on the 16th, in which we brought this to our board and just had some folks speak on behalf of it. And so just wanting to kind of acknowledge that work, and feel free to share kind of your experience with that.
Yeah, sure thing. Thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, and so yeah, I mean, exactly what Steph said was, we were invited to go to the governing board on 2/16, but really want to yield the floor to Jazzy. She was the one who really represented us. So I'll hand the mic off to Jazzy to share what that experience and outcomes were.
Yeah, I will say that I represented us at the wrong point in the agenda, but I did. And just kind of gave our experience here in Stockton and how beneficial this measure has been with the air quality here and the asthma rates, and how beneficial some of our community members are going to feel with having air quality here, and talked a little bit about the pilot program being successful. And there were a lot of folks who gave comment as well, speaking to Fresno and Shafter and advocating for this measure to be on their SERP as well. Cynthia was one of those folks also. So thank you, Cynthia, for your comment. And if you'd like to, you can definitely share how you feel it went. But I think it went well. And I think I did have to leave, but before I left, I think the board was pretty on board, no pun intended, with those measures being adopted and money being reallocated from other measures in order to make it happen in Fresno and Shafter. So yeah, that's the update there. If anybody else wants to share kind of anything about how that went, the floor is open for a second. If not, I think we can move to the next thing.
And I think the reallocation was, just to be clear, I know there was a question like reallocation from the locomotive replacement measures to increase residential air filtration measures in Shafter and South Central Fresno, which is really exciting because that means, residents, the people in the areas are really interested in this. I know in previous meetings, we've talked about how like outdoor gets a lot of attention. Now indoors getting the attention it needs. So we're really excited about that.
Yeah, we totally agree. And we appreciate kind of the flexibility of our board to recognize that, like, hey, there's lots of things that we've learned. Like Stockton obviously I think has the benefit of learning a lot from Fresno and Shafter as well. And I think it's been clear that there are some measures that maybe aren't moving it along as much as we thought they would kind of in the initial start of the SERP. And so we definitely appreciate the flexibility and are looking forward to kicking this off. And for those, I think most people know, but this is this measure was not in the SERP in Fresno and Shafter. So we're happy to kind of have it added to the bunch.
All right. Thank you so much. No, it's good to know. I didn't know that. All right, cool. So yeah, if there's nothing else for that, give the governing board updates and also the check-in. And the big part of discussion that we were really excited about, now we could have that discussion. So thanks, Kyle, for that update, is now talking about like really tailoring that plan to Stockton. And so I know we have a couple of CBOs represented here and folks from our community. And so just wanted to have a discussion on the eligibility criteria and distribution model discussion. There are 3 questions, like, are we supporting in-person events and direct shipping? Is it first come, first serve or hybrid models? And then what is our optional eligibility criteria as outlined in the proposal pen? It sounds like we do have an option to tailor it. And I think that's something that we wanted to run by everyone in the subcommittee. So I guess, Stephanie, we could run through the next part of the slides. Okay.
Yeah, totally. And so we'll break it up into chunks that we're not, we can focus on one thing at a time. The first will be, we kind of mentioned it in November, is that there are different distribution models for this measure. I'm going to share my screen again. And so the two options for distributing air filter units to residents is, one is kind of this option of directly from the manufacturer only. Some kind of pros of this is there will be really fast shipping directly to residents. They don't have to go somewhere to pick it up or anything like that. And it would be really fast processing time. A con of this is if we only do kind of that direct from manufacturer shipping, we don't have a chance to really meet with folks in person for any outreach or connecting with community members. And so a second option we have is this flexible distribution, in which we could also, some of the units are direct from manufacturer, but then we also have an option in which we hold distribution events in person in the community within the boundary. And really some pros of that is, of course, we get to meet with community members. We get to have a space in which we can have other things also available, potentially partnering with some of our other measures, bringing on CBOs, having outreach materials available. And I guess, a slight con to this could be that through this process, there may be the case that there's like different device makes and models that really get out, that go out through different events. And really, I think kind of the crux of this, the big question is, are we interested in holding in-person distribution events within the boundary? Maybe I'll just go ahead and open it up to any thoughts on that.
We can kick off I can kick off the conversation. So no, we totally love to support in-person events, and doing that kind is it's something that we're used to as like CBOs, and it's really nice to put a face to like the measure, to the project and movement that is happening within the community. We feel that's something that's been like very effective in trying to get things rolling out, and meeting people where they are as just one of the ways that we've connected with others in many of our projects. And so like with us, like we'd totally be open to supporting like in-person events and more like direct outreach, that kind. I do see the benefits of direct from manufacturer only, but for the population that we work with, like being flexible to do in person would be beneficial.
Yeah, we love that. That sounds great.
If I might jump in real quick, just to kind of add a little bit more detail to it. Some of the concepts that we feel will work really well if a hybrid approach is taken is that we start with obviously what we can get out fastest, which would be direct ship from manufacturer. So as soon as we get that plan approved and we got all the pieces of the puzzle in place, we can open up that portion, giving us then a little time while devices are rolling out to schedule, plan, and coordinate an in-person event. So the word kind of gets out there and people start getting devices, and the community sees, hey, this is a real thing. People are getting devices, and that kind of then helps bolster an in-person event and the participation and such. And that way, if we do have somebody call us that is very hesitant to have anything shipped to their house, maybe we can, hold on to their application for an in-person event, or, additional people as word gets out. So, and then of course the process of direct ship manufacture would be continuing. It would happen throughout that whole process. You would just have an event kind of plop down in the middle of it while that other process is happening continuously. So.
Thanks, Janine.
I did have a question, Janine, just all like exploring the different options for direct from manufacturer only. If that was the model, they go through like surveys, or would we still have to do outreach to get information to get or would they have to go to like a hardware store or so to sign up? Or what would that look like?
So it would be like any of our other ongoing programs that the district offers. For our residential air filtration, we have an online portal. It's a very easy to use. It's in both English and Spanish, and it allows them to fill out all the information that's needed right online. They could do it from their phone, from a computer, from a tablet. And if somebody is not able or capable to do an online application, then they can call into our office, and our staff will actually over the phone take their information and get it entered into the portal. So we have multiple ways to approach that from a digital sense. They don't need to fill out a piece of paper and mail it. And then we get the information directly into our system and we process it from there.
Well, thank you. So that hybrid approach would be similar to like that model, plus like, you know, going to Ace Hardware or wherever you have like contracted. And
yeah, so when we bring in the events, typically for an event, we will do an RSVP because we need to make sure we don't have more people show up than what we have devices available. And we also need to make sure that we've had some time to properly map their address, verify their address, and any other criteria that the community decides upon. So we do a process where we kind of collect their information ahead of the event, a few weeks ahead of the event. That way we can converse with them, let them know, give them instructions, and work through that process. So the day of the event, it can be hopefully very smooth. Our events we've done for other programs have gone really well. So yeah, it is still gathering that information, having some conversations with them, preparing them for the event, and then day of they show up with the goal of getting them their device, as well as having other sources of information available to them. This measure comes with that weatherization and information component. So an in-person event is a great opportunity for us to be able to help pass out other information and disseminate that information amongst the residents attending.
And I think maybe some of you remember someone from the weatherization program came, Layetta. We've already kind of planted the seed. Our hope is that when we do in-person outreach events, we'll have that whole team there available to talk about weatherization in that program, in addition to kind of whatever, all of the CBOs that want to come and participate and do outreach as well at those events. Cool. So I'm hearing generally support. It sounds like, and I think we've heard it in previous meetings, like in-person events could, great opportunity to do outreach and connect with the community. So that's something we're taking note of. And I think maybe kind of moving through the agenda here, one of the next questions we want to pose to folks is like, in terms of how these applications they'll come to us and how they get processed. There are options to kind of, we've heard from other communities that there are some that are just, want them to get out into the community as soon as possible. So are pushing for first come, first serve processing of applications. But I think we also have heard the thought and desire to prioritize certain populations, and folks that are maybe more in need based on different factors get processed first. And so that is something that we also wanted to discuss with this group. It's a smaller group, but Kevin, Jazzy, Cynthia, any thoughts on kind of this first come, first serve versus potentially like prioritizing certain populations as we process applications?
Yeah, I have a question. I know a few months ago we had some discussion about kind of like a hybrid model, and that's something that we looked at in, I think, the proposals that were sent for Fresno and Shafter as well. So is that still kind of the plan, to do a hybrid model to be able to assess like on the fly as well, like reserve a certain amount for those most at need populations? Just kind of circling back to that conversation, but I'd be again still in favor of holding several amount of filters for those most in need, and doing another portion first come first serve. And I think we talked about like a 60-40% last time. I think I remember the conversation being, but just wondering where that conversation is at, if that was part of what the board adopted in their resolution.
So great question, Cynthia. So, and I remember us kind of going through all of those different scenarios. So the way the project plan is written is we can definitely incorporate that concept. It's not specifically called out because it's more of a processing thing on our side. So the way the project plan was written and approved by our governing board is that we have the base criteria, which is you must live in the boundary. Mm-hmm. So first out of the door. And some communities may say that's the only thing we want, because we have some of our smaller communities where their allotment is going to pretty much cover every house located in their boundary. So everybody gets one. And then we have the option to bring in these extra criteria. Now, how you bring in those extra ones is, I think, what we kind of want to discuss and maybe get some direction on today. That can be either you pick one or more of those extra criteria and say, if you check yes to one of these items on your application, then we will bump you to the front of the line and process you first. Or it could be that scenario where we just portion out the total pot of money, and anybody who marks those selected items on their application gets funded from that pot of money. Everybody else who marks no to those items just comes out of that pot of money for that reservation, and knowing that you will make sure that a majority of the funds, or whatever the designated percentage of the funds, went to applications that had one or more of those items marked. That doesn't necessarily mean that we will prioritize them in the order. We would still look at them in first come, first serve, but they would have secured funding, possibly longer through the program, if we allocated that pot of money like 60% to priority population and 40% to just standard population. So it kind of one of two ways there, I guess we could kind of look at it. Number one, do we want to bring in those extra criteria in some fashion, yes or no? And then if yes, how do we want to bring them in? And in my impression from past meetings, the answer to my first question, I think, is yes, we do want to bring in some of those additional levels of criteria. We will, and let me also say this, we do plan on asking these questions on every single application, because we will have to run the same portal for every community. So the questions will be there. The data will be there later on for analysis. Whether or not a community chooses to use them to rank, order, or allocate funds differently is kind of what the discussion is. Hope that made sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's extremely helpful. I think we had a list of some ideas that we were interested in. I'm wondering if we can maybe hone in on that list. And I know we shared it with the whole community steering committee, but I'm interested in what next steps we need to take to kind of like really finalize this. And I know we've had some initial discussion with the full CSC, but wondering what it would take to bring it to a vote and have some discussion on this item.
I'd say just process-wise, generally, I'll just kind of share what we've been doing, I think, across all subcommittees, is making sure that I think what we're looking for is just, subcommittee consensus. Once we come to a consensus as a subcommittee, we'll bring it to the full CSC and also look for consensus as well. That's just kind of how it's written in our charter, that we'll seek consensus. And if consensus can't be met, then we'll vote on it. And so that's kind of what we've done across the board. Like, for example, for our tree subcommittee, we've generally just brought those back, and with subcommittee support, and if folks are supportive of it and there aren't, big objections, then we kind of are able to move forward with it. So I think maybe I'll just kind of share I know that in our prep call, we did kind of mention, and I think a lot of folks might be in the know about this, that we're hoping to have an April meeting in person in Stockton. And if it's the case that our subcommittee can kind of come to a consensus on these couple of topics, like the distribution model, the eligibility criteria, we just maybe want to bring that back and could potentially do it at our very fun and exciting in-person meeting to just get full consensus from our CSC in the hopes of really, Janine, and I think Janine and I can get into it a little bit more. Really, once the project plan is approved, I think this program is going to roll out a lot sooner than we think. And so we definitely want to work with this group sooner rather than later to kind of get approval from the CSC.
Yeah, thank you all. I wanted to chime in about the hybrid model and also just uplift also what Jazzy said in the chat. It sounds like she is in agreement with in-person events and hybrid distribution. Cynthia mentioned hybrid distribution. I'm in the same opinion as well. I love to support a hybrid model, especially factoring, and that is the big conversation of with adding like applicant eligibility and looking more into that. I think it's a great way to invest in parts of the community that have been neglected to do both, because we definitely want to cater to those who are proactive, that are really like looking at this and they want to sign up, but also leaving space for those who necessarily don't get information as fast enough. And so that's sort of like my thinking and sort of the equitable outreach and strategy. So I'm all for hybrid model 60-40, what the group's been talking about.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in also and just say I think that these 3 requirements, and as it's written, of meeting one or more of the following, any of these, and then we'll collect the data, right, to moving forward, so then we know like how many of these folks had an illness, or how many from the priority was someone under 18 and so forth. Yeah, I think that really works. I kind of, to the 60-40, I think maybe like, yeah, reserving maybe 60% of the funds for priority at first. But I think that they can kind of happen simultaneously, like the second option you were mentioning, Janine, of maybe moving certain applicants to whatever pot of funds. And maybe we can do an evaluation a few months into the distribution and see if we need to take a look at like how those pots are looking, and whether or not we need to change the ratio or anything like that.
I have a feeling that we will see a majority, just based on what we saw in our pilot program, which was scaled down much smaller, but across a much larger area. I have a feeling we will see a majority of the people answer yes to at least one of those additional criteria. With that being said, there will be a small population, or I should say a smaller population, that don't mark anything, or maybe they don't want to mark anything. Some people just don't like giving a lot of information to, through an application process. So we also try to respect that privacy that some people want. And so we don't make it a requirement that they answer these questions. We make it an optional, knowing that at the end of the day, the main criteria is that they are in the boundaries. So, I think we definitely can start with a 60-40 split, or something along those lines, and just take the applications on a first come, first serve, and just know that if we are getting close to, the percentage for either of those 2 categories, that we might need to kind of pause, do an assessment, look if we need to shift money around, or if we end up, hitting the 40% for the standard applications very quickly, maybe assessing why. Is it because they're not answering the questions, or is it because we need to do more targeted outreach, or we could definitely do those analysis on the fly and see. But I think that we will probably see a majority of them come in with those questions answered, and probably at least one being yes. And then also knowing that if the program is really well received and it goes really fast, there's always that opportunity to come back to the table and talk about additional funding.
Yeah.
And then speaking of, I mean, I don't know if we're on this portion yet, but it just came to my mind about other optional eligibility criteria. One of the things I was thinking about was whether or not they have central heating and air. Because if they don't, then they don't have that extra protection of being able to get a certain kind of filter for their units.
So that is actually already on our standard application, I believe. Maybe not. Maybe that was something I wanted to put on there. I'm going to double check that, because I know we've talked about that a lot, and we spoke with a lot of Valley residents that didn't have a central HVAC unit, and especially during wildfire season, they're really at a disadvantage, because the swamp cooler just, well, anybody that's lived with one knows the knows the challenges. So we can definitely look at that. Now, we might have to use a little caution because it's not listed in the overall project plan. So that might be something that we ask about on the application, but I'm not sure. And maybe Brian or Kyle can help, maybe if they have any thoughts on that. I'm not sure if we can make it a hard line criteria because we did not list it in the project plan as that.
Kyle would probably, he's the incentives guru. I don't know, Kyle, if you have thoughts on that?
Well, at the end of the day, revising project plans is a potential thing that's on the table. We've got a sort of, I guess you could call it a sub process to handle sort of revisions like that without having to just go through the entire arduous, many weeks to months long back and forth that you've seen in action from us. So there, like, if worse comes to worse and there's some sort of restriction that needs to be changed, there's an avenue to do that that's a little less cumbersome. That being said, it might be, I would take this with a grain of salt, to be fair. There might be some flexibility for their district to be more stringent than the limits in the project plan outline, as opposed to like being, less restrictive. I think generally speaking, we're at CARB, we're more worried about meeting the minimum requirements. And so if you're doing something more strenuous or stringent, I think that might end up being okay. Hard for me to say for sure off the top of my head.
No, I get you, Kyle. I know that's a tough one because it really comes down to, some very specific conversations. But I do understand what you're saying. There are other state programs where we can choose to be more stringent than what the guidelines require. The Carl Warner program is one of those. So that could definitely, and maybe what we do is we start the program off with that just being a question, a data point that we're collecting, and then we start assessing what the actual need is before we get too far into the money. So that way, if we do need to ask for that quick pathway to make an update, we could do that. So that could definitely be something that we add just initially as just a data point to collect, and we just monitor it closely to see if there's a greater need there to make it more of a eligibility criteria.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. And for us, the big concern always comes back to like, okay, is the community at large supportive of this action? And so, like, thankfully, with my involvement here with any of these conversations, it's usually pretty apparent. Like in this case, it would definitely be a community-driven sort of decision, which makes it a lot easier for my upper management to agree more quickly to things.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, it might end up being just one of the things that we can handle through like a sort of policy conversation.
Gotcha. Okay.
At risk of overpromising. I don't want to overpromise, and I do have a tendency to do that.
I won't hold you to it, Kyle.
And I guess that maybe it's also worth saying at some of these other, so just on this slide, there's listed kind of this additional, like Janine saying, the base criteria really is, of course, residing in the boundary, in our AB 617 boundary. And then here, kind of in this first section is just those optional criteria that we can choose to prioritize on, which is, I'm hearing that we do want to do some prioritization along these lines. And then, of course, kind of, I think just generally, we want to make sure we're also kind of on the other side of this, our outreach, we do really want to make sure we are targeting it towards these in-need populations, as well as working with kind of CBOs on in-person outreach events and just getting this information out to the community. But yeah, overall, I'm hearing kind of just maybe some of the notes I'll just summarize as I'm hearing kind of support for a 60-40 split kind of these priority buckets or a priority bucket of 60% kind of towards priority populations, 40% for kind of like standard applications that come through, hearing support for kind of a hybrid distribution model in which we're doing some in-person events, but also really kicking off this program strong with just, being able to do distribution through our manufacturer. Does anyone have any other feedback or questions that they want to add at this point?
Just have a quick point on the applicant eligibility. I know, like, when we were prepping for this meeting, we were saying that that's like a larger conversation. I know we were gonna, I don't want to like get too ahead of ourselves, but I know it's Jazzy and Cynthia and myself like representing, but just, talking about that, all of it is pretty relevant, but I would definitely love to hear like residents' feedback. I know Margot couldn't be here today, but I was gonna propose like at tomorrow's CSC meeting, to do a call out during our updates and really explore, maybe we do have a special session to talk about all this, because we definitely want more community input. Not just three of us working on like asthma, but we definitely want to make it an equitable process. So to me, like, all these are really relevant, and I could go write like 5 pages about why. Yeah.
Thanks, Kevin. And we totally agree. I know, we want to do this work with folks that are really interested in this work, which is obviously we have a strong group of people here, but of course we want to make sure we're kind of pulling in the residents. And, I'm hearing also just generally a lot of consensus around certain things. So I do think we don't have to wait until the April meeting. I think we have plenty of time on the agenda. So if any one of you wants to give a quick update and just, tease out if folks are interested, and then maybe we can have that, like you're saying, a special March session to kind of iron everything out, because maybe I realized I wasn't sharing my screen as I was talking earlier, but again, what I was mentioning earlier is, of course, these are the optional criteria that we are considering, and it sounds like supporting in this group, and just also wanting to make sure that we are prioritizing outreach and working with local CBOs. And maybe I'll just kind of wrap up by talking about just next steps and maybe framing kind of timeline for this group. Our goal is ultimately to bring subcommittee recommendations back to the CSC for full approval, just to make sure, like Kevin's saying, we're looping in all of the voices that are in our community steering committee. We can plan to discuss and solicit feedback at our April meeting, but even tomorrow's meeting, I think that's a great platform, and we have the time for it during standing updates. And something that we'd be looking to do is just finalizing kind of all aspects of the program, kind of eligibility criteria, distribution model, and things like that, to prepare the program application and portal. Janine mentioned we have a portal that we use for the district-wide program, and we'd look to do something similar and would probably have to make some changes to it. So we'd want to make sure we fine-tune the application and make sure it's all ready before and we could look to potentially open it a little bit early just to start getting those applications rolling. And then also I heard support for it during our prep call, and maybe we'll just check in with you all if there's still support for potentially like a hybrid outreach and indoor air and weatherization subcommittee, like a special session in March to kind of finalize outreach plans and strategize for what the support I'm hearing for some of these in-person events as well.
What does collaboration with outreach look like? Because I know it's its own subcommittee. Would we be joining into their calls, or there's like vice versa?
I think we could just plan to have a special session in which there's like one meeting, and we'll invite, obviously, I think you all know everyone gets the invite, anyone who's interested. And maybe we'll even get some new members that are like, oh, we didn't realize this was all happening in these committees, and anyone would be welcome to join. Yeah. So is there still, I'm wondering, is there maybe a volunteer from this group that wants to do the update that we normally do, the subcommittee update during our standing updates tomorrow?
I proposed it, so I probably will go ahead and do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
If anyone, and Jazzy too. If I know she's not feeling too well, so I'm happy to help.
Yeah. Perfect. No, I know that just generally, I think in our district updates, we were already planning on mentioning just all the exciting things, but I think hearing about what the subcommittee's up to will be great. And I think, and maybe I'll just check in with folks that we're still interested in holding this kind of like final March outreach and indoor air subcommittee.
So just it's pretty much just give an update at the standing at like the end towards the meeting.
Yeah, so it would be, I'll have to check the agenda, but at the end of the meeting, there's always that item that we have kind of towards the end of the meeting. That's like all the subcommittees that have updates, and then all the agencies like, of course, CARB, Port of Stockton will just do, quick updates. And it's super flexible. You don't need a presentation. It's just a quick verbal update or whatever you want to make it.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
All right, I'm happy to do that.
Awesome.
Thank you, Kevin.
Got you, Jazzy. No worries.
Okay, well, sounds good. I think that, I know that just kind of this group. Sorry, Jazzy, I saw you unmuted. Go ahead.
I was gonna just ask about that outreach piece that Kevin was mentioning, if there's at some point during the CSC, or if it can just be an email with the outreach subcommittee about having a joint meeting
Yes.
coming soon, so we can start planning.
Yeah, if that all sounds good, I'll do kind of the usual email. That's like, the purpose of this meeting is to, meet with the outreach and subcommittee to plan, decide an outreach plan and work on strategizing for like potential in-person events, and add a little blurb, and we can work with you all and connect you all with kind of the leads of that subcommittee, and we can all maybe prep together to put an agenda together for that meeting, if that sounds good. Okay, seeing thumbs up. Perfect. That sounds good with us. And I'm just checking in on the agenda here. I think that we got to a lot of I think I'm seeing most of the questions that we had listed, or all of them, we've kind of addressed. I'm wondering, Janine, do you see anything that we haven't touched on?
No, I don't think so. I think that was everything.
Perfect. Does anyone in this group have any questions for us? Anything about the project plan? And you know what? Maybe I'll actually share out for folks that are interested. We did have, like Janine and Kyle were mentioning earlier, there were a couple of revisions to the project plan. And I know some folks in here in the call have it, but I'm happy to share the new version that has a couple of small updates in case folks want to kind of peruse that.
I can quickly go over those if you want, because they're pretty minor.
Sure. Yeah. And while you're doing that, I'll drop the link in the chat.
Yeah. So one of the areas, and I apologize, I don't remember which community had asked for this, but they wanted daycare facilities and private preschools to be included in the project plan. So we had started with that, with those entities being eligible. However, because of the fact that we're using public funds, we have to be aware and cognizant of the constitutional requirements of the use of public funds. And unfortunately, in discussions with CARB, the conclusion was made that those facilities would not meet the criteria for being able to accept public funds. So we did remove those. Now, with that being said, private preschools or daycare facilities that are held within somebody's private residence, that residence is still eligible to apply. Their business as a daycare would not be. You can see between those lines. So we can still address getting an air filtration device delivered to a residential home within the community boundaries, even if that home happens to also serve as a private daycare facility. And so that was one area there. I did just a very slight language change on the criteria bullet 6, which is have at least one person 65 years of age or older. Originally it said living at the residence. We changed it to say at the residence. Again, because it might be a daycare, not a daycare, but some type of daycare situation. We did not make that change for the children. We did it for the seniors, just in the situation of having some seniors that do require assisted living situations. So again, just making sure that anywhere that those very vulnerable would be at could be, accounted for. We also made a small change to the increased outreach and weatherization section, which is section D. to clearly identify that the $1 million allocated for the communities was specifically for project funds and not for outreach efforts. Those dollars are coming from a different source, a different pot of money, our mini grants and such. So we just wanted CARB had asked us to clarify that. We wanted to make sure it was clear that that $1 million is not being used on outreach efforts. Outreach is coming from a different source. And then we also had some discussions about the calculation methodology, which probably nobody in the community really cares about, but that is a part of the money. And so while we had included some methodology that was really structured for school air filtration, CARB staff felt that it wouldn't be very accurate. And so we got the request to just go ahead and remove it and only track the qualitative benefits, which we were more than happy to do. The less calculating and the less tracking, the better. So if in the future calculation methodology is approved for residential air filtration, then we will then incorporate that in. But again, that really doesn't have anything to do with the participation by the community residents. It's really something on the backside for the district in reporting back to CARB on how the funds were used and what was achieved in the program. So that's it.
Thanks, Janine. And I dropped the link to this newest updated project plan into the chat. If you're interested, feel free to take a look. This is what's kind of, as Kyle's saying, hopefully very soon to be approved by CARB. Awesome. I'm just looking at the time here. We do have a few minutes, but just wondering if there's any kind of some next steps for us is that, we are working, Janine is finalizing the RFQ to hopefully get out soon. We are awaiting CARB's approval and then looking to kind of bring this back to the full CSC eventually for approval. But I think we have some good, I know Janine is taking notes and I am too, just about what some of the feedback that we're getting regarding kind of the different pots of money, and the distribution models as well. And Janine, I'm seeing something in the chat. If that language from your last point can be added to the notes, that'd be great. Oh, okay.
And then my next steps, I'll do a call out at CSC and give them updates from what we've talked about today. Works out perfectly. And I'll also meet with you, Stephanie, and also Janine, and about possibly a next session sometime in March. So we'll gauge who's interested.
That sounds good. And Jazzy, I will pop in. I'll do a quick summary of kind of what Janine just said about that the
calculation
benefits.
methodology.
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect. Do we have any last questions, comments?
I appreciate you all. Thank you.
No, thank you. I'm glad that I think we have a consensus here.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to move it forward to the CSC.
We're so excited, and we're so excited to get this program started in Stockton.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, very excited for all this. I'm very excited because usually I don't get to share good news. So I'm so happy for the opportunity this time.
And you know what, Kyle, I'm sure the rest of the team that's working on that approval will appreciate you giving that update, because I was just about ready to email them and be like, what's the update?
Yeah, not as much.
I'm sure that they will be happy to not get another email from me asking for yet another update. So thank you.
I should make it clear also on that note, I talked a big game about like shepherding the project plan along and making things run smoothly. The reality, I did not have nearly as much involvement as I wanted or intended. And so this final thrust is all from my coworkers that were the ones that were the active review team. Any praise is all towards them.
Good deal. Well, and it didn't help that we sent it over to them like in the peak of holiday season when I'm sure, people are on vacation and with family and such. So we appreciate all the effort to get it reviewed and the comments and back. So we're really excited though. I mean, I can't wait to open this up for the communities. Everybody's worked so hard to make it happen. And this is one of those programs that you really do get to see immediate effects and people's lives are immediately impacted in a positive way. So really excited to make this final push. We've got, about roughly 45 days or so to get that RFQ process out there and completed, and then we'll be ready to contract vendors and open the program. So we're on the home stretch.
Well, thank you all. Have a great evening. For those of you that like it, may it still be raining outside for you as you're hopefully ending your day.
Thanks. Have a good one, everybody.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much.
Good evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Yeah, bye everybody.